Welcome to Study Skills for Success in College. This is the second in our 3-lecture series for this chapter, which is Positive Attitudes and Goals, Preparing Your Mind for Success. In the first lecture for this chapter, following the introduction, we looked at the basic differences between the conscious and the subconscious mind. We also talked about the defining characteristics of locus of control. And today we'll be discussing the first two of four methods to create a positive and self-motivating attitude. Your attitude will influence not only what you think about yourself, but also what other people think about you. You really have two simple choices. You can assume a positive or a negative attitude in any situation. For the next few minutes, let's talk about the first of four methods that create a positive and self-motivating attitude. Did you ever hear a weather forecaster describe, sorry, I messed up my slides here, describe the conditions as either partly sunny or partly cloudy? Aren't these conditions the same? You're just looking at it from a different perspective. Is this going to be a good day or a bad day for you? Which would you pick? Your answer depends on your attitude. You decide whether the glass is half empty or half full. People with positive attitudes would say the glass is half full, or that's a partly sunny day and it's going to be a good one. However, people with negative attitudes see a half empty glass and complain about the partly cloudy weather and the lousy day they're sure they're going to have. In addition, you might try to blame it all on someone else. Which person is more enjoyable to work with, the former or the latter? Figure 2-2 shows just a look can convey an attitude, the way a facial expression is expressing itself. Tell me if you've been in the following situation or something similar. A few months ago, I walked into a large chain hardware store looking to purchase a couple gallons of paint. I knew the color I needed, but I wasn't sure if the paint that I needed was a semi-gloss or glossy. I had brought a small sample that I peeled from the wall in the room that I was going to paint. And when I walked up, the girl behind the counter was staring at the screen in front of her. I just waited. She either doesn't realize that I'm standing here 2 feet in front of her, or she's rude. I waited for about 10 or so seconds. Nothing. "Hi," I said. She didn't look up from her screen, but she did reply, "Can I help you?" This wasn't one of those "I'm happy you're here" greetings. No, it was more of a tone of, "Why'd you have to bother me now? I'm busy and you're annoying me." Ah, I thought, this is my opportunity, right? This is a great opportunity to change someone's attitude by being happy. So smiling, I said, "I was wondering if you might help me to determine if this particular piece of this particular sample is gloss or glossy." She took the small sample piece from me and she stared at it. "Might be too small to check." Then she handed it back to me and looked back at her screen. Well, I waited again. Maybe she was looking for an answer online or something I didn't know, so I just waited. She finally looked up. I smiled. She didn't, but she did reply with a cold, "What's up?" Now, this is an extreme example of someone who's rolled out of bed with a here we go again attitude, right? Her day was likely doomed from the moment her feet hit the floor, and she's likely made a habit of this. Life to her is a struggle, not a positive opportunity. Now, imagine that this same employee, when she saw me walk up, would say with a smile, "Hi, is there something I can help you with?" And that's the way to do things. This kind of attitude not only helps to improve the day of the customer, but it also helps to improve the day of the employer herself or himself. Consider doing exercise 2-2 in your textbook. It's a simple way to remind yourself of the importance of first impressions. Reframing your attitude simply means looking at things in a more positive way or a positive light. It's best to start off believing you're going to have a good day, but in reality, things may happen to make your day go differently than planned. That's just life. Positive thinkers will make the best of it and reframe their thinking. Let's say you waited for over an hour for your appointment at the doctor's office. Let's look at how people with two different attitudes would approach a situation like that. What would a negative attitude yield? As you might expect, a person with a negative attitude would become very upset in a situation like that and begin to give in to irrational thoughts. Their blood pressure would rise. The experience would be a bad one for both doctor and patient. Maybe in their anger, they might forget to tell the doctor something that could affect their treatment. And after they leave, things would just snowball. The rest of their interactions that day with everybody would be somewhat hostile. They might have a bad day at work or school, might get a headache, they might have a difficult time sleeping at night. And then, because of a lack of sleep, the next day will start off on a bad note and the cycle just goes on. But how about a positive attitude? A person with a positive attitude may initially feel upset, but they'll take the time to think about the situation logically, and they'll regain their composure and reframe their thinking from anger to acceptance. This person realizes they have no control over the situation and they have to simply wait to see their doctor. There's no sense ruining the rest of their day. Positive people may sit back and take a few deep breaths and do something constructive. They may have taken some work with them to the doctor's office just in case the doctor's office the doctor's office just in case something like that happened. By getting their work done while waiting, they've turned a potentially negative experience into a positive one. And then later they can go out to the movie they wanted to see. In other words, they've regained the time that they lost due to the long wait. Why? Because they took a different perspective. It's because they reframed their thinking. Mind is the master power that molds and makes. And man is mind, and evermore he takes the tool of thought and, shaping what he wills, brings forth 1,000 joys, 1,000 ills. He thinks in secret, and it comes to pass. Environment is but his looking glass. What a great poem by James Allen. In a nutshell, it says, "You are in control of the way you look at life." In this exercise 2-3, we're asked to reframe three situations to create more positive outcomes. This is a really good exercise in that we're required to contemplate, to consider, to sit quietly and reach into psychological places rarely visited. In truth, and due to human nature, we find it easier when we're confronted with negative things and circumstances to fall into a negative mindset. This is a chance to think about ways in each of the three situations listed to think positively, to actually reconsider the negative as positive. This exercise also allows us the opportunity to write not only about thinking positively, but also about how to accept and take responsibility for our circumstances. So far, we've stressed the importance of planting positive thoughts in the garden of the mind. But for a garden to thrive, if we're going to use that metaphor, it also requires regular weeding to get rid of the bad plants. The second method in creating a positive and self motivating attitude revolves around getting rid of destructive or irrational beliefs. Continuing with this garden metaphor, there are beautiful flowers and nutritious vegetables being hidden, and worse yet, having the life sucked out of them. That's us in negativity. But there's a beautiful garden there. You are worth weeding. Have you ever heard of a self-fulfilling prophecy? It means if you believe something strongly enough and plant it firmly in your mind, it can come true. For example, if you tell yourself you'll never get organized, you won't, because that's a seed you're planting. In addition, you're wasting a lot of time telling yourself all the reasons why you can't get organized. Time you could have spent actually getting organized. One way to rid ourselves of irrational beliefs is through positive self talk. Talking to yourself doesn't necessarily mean you're crazy. In fact, talking is slower than thinking, and so it can slow your mind that could be racing, and it could help you to, in turn, focus. This thing we call self talk has some of the ingredients necessary to boost self esteem if it's optimistic and positive. For example, replace negative thoughts such as, I'm not smart enough to pass this course, with a spoken statement like, if I study hard and plan well, I'll do well in this course. Of course, this is not magical. It has to be accompanied by carefully planned actions like study hard and plan well in order for it to work. But replacing the negative self talk with a positive is akin to a gardener looking out at their garden, recognizing the weeds, and heading in the garden's direction in order to rid it of those weeds. Now, actually, pulling the weeds is the action that you take as a response to the positive self talk or positive self messages. In addition to positive self talk, other strategies can get rid of the weeds that may grow in your mind. Avoid dwelling on past negative or unpleasant experiences, and never carry grudges. Easier said than done, to be sure. But those thoughts, those grudges, only serve to waste your energy and destroy your motivation. They're also not good for your health. Now, many offenses should be forgiven, but in other cases, forgiveness is not necessary, particularly if the offender has not confessed to the offense and has not made the appropriate changes. That said, non forgiveness does not require the offended to hold on to the offense. The problem belongs to the offender. Give it all over to them. Let go. You have a life to live. Let me challenge you to do the test yourself exercise in this section of the textbook and be honest with it. If you are, the action plan part of the exercise will prove beneficial, I'm sure. If it's going to prove beneficial, You have to be honest. Another way to rid ourselves of irrational beliefs is by balancing our attitude. We should all strive for a balanced life, including our attitudes and emotions. Now, many people view anger as a negative emotion, but just like stress, a little anger can be good. It can lead us on to do better or to right a wrong. However, prolonged anger that lasts beyond where it should and when it should, can lead to destructive behavior and illness. We have to be realistic about anger. When we find ourselves angry, we should ask ourselves two questions. Is the anger justified? If not, let it go. If so, move to the second question. Will my anger result in the good of myself and or others? If the answer, and we must be honest with ourselves, is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, be careful with your anger. Respond rationally. We all become sad when something tragic happens. This makes us human. It's important to know the difference between sadness and depression. If someone is sad following a painful disappointment or the loss of a loved one, it's a normal part of the grieving process. However, if the sadness remains for a long time and gets in the way of living your life, it might not just be sadness or grief anymore, it could be depression. Balance, again, is the key factor. Look at Table 2-2, which contrasts a constructive versus destructive approach to life. And the bigger question is, where do you fit in? Now, Mark Twain's quote here is cleverly telling us that most of what we worry about never happens. Let's read it. I'm an old man and I've known a great many problems, but most of them never happen. We waste all that energy by worrying, and nothing good comes from worrying. You may think we're telling you not to worry about your grades this semester, and you're right. The difference is that rather than worrying, you should be concerned about your grades this semester. When you're worried, you clench your jaw and your mind goes a million miles per hour with messages like, I'm never going to understand this. I'm never going to pass this course. What if I fail? That's worry, and it's a reflection of an external locus of control mindset. In other words, I don't believe that I have control of my destiny when it comes to this. Conversely, when you're concerned, you do something to make sure things go the way you want them to. For example, students should be concerned about how well they'll do in a difficult course. And this means coming up with a plan for how to approach the course to maximize their chances for success. So a student who's actually concerned rather than worried might think, I know this is a tough course. That's being realistic. But if I do the following A, B, C, I will pass it. This student's plan could involve studying for an hour each day, keeping up with all the assignments, talking to or emailing with the teacher at least once a week. Notice the difference? Worry is wasted energy and no action. Concern involves creating a plan for how to succeed. In exercise 2-5, you can try out this strategy. Remember this old saying, worrying is like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. In the final lecture for this chapter, we'll talk about the last three methods to create a positive and self-motivating attitude. And we'll see you then.